Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we can take a dive into the world of health and fitness when we learn to overcome adversity, to pick back first fiction, and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Today's, ladies and gentlemen, today is going to be all about sleeping, all about stressing, and not in the way you think it's going to be. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show Emily Marquis, who is a board-certified health and wellness coach. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to take a nap during this episode. No, I'm totally playing.
I won't let you.
Fair enough. I just hope to learn all about the importance of it and all that fun stuff. It's one of my favorite topics. But before we get into that, I just want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I know we were talking a little pre-show how you basically do like 6 different things. It's pretty crazy. I don't know how you have time to sleep, but just tell us how all of this got started and why you kind of got into this field.
Yeah, so I have always, to go way back, I grew up in the 80s, and McDonald's and Honey Buns and, all those things were, and I lived on the East Coast, so Dunkin' Donuts was part of our lifestyle. But I also always remember wanting to feel good. And my mom would schedule her, I don't, 2 working parents, so my mom would schedule meals sometimes around her aerobics classes, or we weren't allowed to have fruit roll-ups or soda. And so that was those small things were sort of ingrained into me. And I just have always I grew up being a dancer, so moving my body was important to me. But I also had issues with health my entire life, stomach issues. And then as I got older into adulthood, some mental health issues, anxiety, sleep, depression, stress, you name it, on top of stomach stuff. And I started going to doctor. And finally, I realized I had some hormonal changes. So I had PCOS. I had gluten intolerance, which led to a plethora of other food allergies and thyroid issues and all these things. And so my doctors, you can either go on a bunch of medications, which is necessary at some point, but also they're like, okay, you're drinking too much and you're stressing too much. And, these are things that you can change. You're so young to start doing that. And I was working a big corporate job. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to take this by the horns and start making some changes. So really changed my lifestyle all the way down to my relationships. And this is over time of, creating like-minded people around me, creating positive people around me, making sure my relationships were healthy. And then also my diet, my exercise, alcohol, what kind of jobs am I having that's stressful? Am I sleeping? And I really, this literally took 10 years. I had to change my whole life, which sounds like a lot, but and it was, but I felt like I had to do it on my own. I worked in HR and I saw all these people just struggling at work because they weren't well.
Can I stop you right there? I want to just ask a few questions that got going through my mind right there. So first, just back to what you were diagnosed with. So you said PCOS. Can you just explain to everyone what that is?
Yes. So it's polycystic ovary syndrome. And for those of you who can't see me, and Anthony, you can't see me, I'm 5'2", very small, petite build. And that is both lifestyle, but also I'm very fortunate, and that's just my genetic build generally. So generally with PCOS, the symptoms of that can be overweight, obesity, hair growth. So it took me a while to get diagnosed. So anyway, PCOS is a very common thing, unfortunately now, but it's a hormone, it's an endocrine problem within women, where you have generally too much testosterone, but or there's a plethora of things, but your menstrual cycle is abnormal, and long story short, you don't to ovulate. When your egg releases, it just turns into a cyst. So your ovaries become like a pearl necklace, they call it, with just hundreds of cysts all over them. And it
Wow.
ends up being an endocrine thing. But I completely reversed it with my diet changes and was able to have children.
Wow, that's incredible. And then you were mentioned thyroid. Was it hypo, which means slow, or hyper, which means super fast thyroid? What were you dealing with here?
Yes, hypothyroidism. And I believe that they're probably related, the PCOS and the thyroid. So I was not able to manage the hypothyroidism with total lifestyle changes. So I am on medication with that, which I will be on for life. But I keep it under control with the continued healthy habits that I have.
So after you walked away from this diagnosis and you kind of had an understanding of what was going on, what made you take that next step? I know you said you kind of just did it and changed every aspect of your life, but I know that a lot of people that's something they're just going to do. So what was the reasoning in your head to just do it, and what could you tell others to maybe help them out if they're in a similar situation?
Well, for me, I did not, I mean, medication is a necessary route. Like I said, I'm on thyroid medication, which is a choice I made, but I did not want to be on medication after medication after medication with side effect after side effect for the rest of my life. And I also didn't feel well mentally. And so I just had this desire to do something different, because my doctors did say these things will improve your situation if you eat better or move more, sleep better, cut out some alcohol. Obviously, it took me a long time to get there, but I just was like, I don't want to be on all these medications, because if I start now in my 20s, am I going to make it to 60 without adding on all these medications that are not just expensive, but I don't want to spend my life in and out of doctor's offices, which I already had done. So that was a huge motivation for me. And then having kids, if I knew that was a huge why for me. If I didn't make changes, like at 20, not and being told that children may not be in my future was a hard pill for me to swallow. Pun intended.
Yeah. I couldn't even imagine. That's just got to be kind of, oh, let me do something about it. I want to have kids at this point in my life, and congrats to you. That's amazing.
Yes.
So you dove in, you started changing. You said you were in HR and you were seeing people kind of having that similar aspect with other issues going on in their lives. So what made you becoming a health coach? What led from one to the next?
Yes. Well, when I was going through all these challenges, I was working in human resources where I built policies about healthy workforces and taking time off and pay, and how do we care for our people so that they show up to work and are engaged. And I couldn't do that because I was having to go to the doctor all the time and worried about, am I going to get in trouble? And so I was worried about my performance, and there was no problem there, but it was a stressor for me. So part of my job was terminating people or coaching them when they were not meeting the needs or expectations. And more than 10 times out of 10, the conversation wasn't about work. They had something else going outside, like personal, like relationship problems, or they weren't sleeping, or they're needing to go to the doctor because something's going on with their kid or their health. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I can relate. There's got to be a better way. And I felt like I was going through it all by myself. And so this profession as health coaching started emerging at that time. And I started getting into it because I never want people to have to go through that alone. Because it is hard. Change is hard. But you don't have to do it alone. And support systems, even with a coach, is your ticket to success. So that's why I wanted to help people.
That's awesome. So you kind of just thought that would be the solution to all these people that are coming with the problems, which, I mean, you're talking about one company, but I couldn't agree with you more that it's everywhere. Regardless whether it's the company or a family dynamic or a friend dynamic, there's always something else in somebody's life, which is why they're outlashing on something else.
Yeah,
having poor performance or something like that.
Right. Everyone has the innate desire to do well at work. And if they're not, it's usually either the job stinks or something else is going on for sure in their life.
So you hopped in, you're doing this now, you're starting to ramp up, meet people. What were some commonalities of things you saw with patients or clients that you noticed as like a particular trend?
Yeah, I think, again, going back to that desire, that people do want to feel well. They don't, want to be unhealthy, or they don't want to be on a ton of medication or sitting on the couch all the time. It's just, if we weren't given the tools or the resources to do so growing up, or we're overwhelmed with our to-do list, then it's overwhelming. And so I think the commonality is we all want to feel well. It's just the how, and then conjuring up that motivation to take one small step. It seems like too big. But the other commonality is really, I would say, sleep and stress right now, as you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, is a huge barrier to people's moving forward in weight loss, in getting to the gym. I mean, if you're too stressed about trying to get to the gym, it's not going to happen. If you're not sleeping well, then you're not going to wake up and on the right foot and I'm going to start my day off by exercising and having the best breakfast ever. You're just going to like walk in and, grab something and hope you can make it through the day. So this is a common problem that I see with people in a barrier. And once you start feeling well with sleep and a little less stress, the other things feel more doable.
Well, let's start with the big one, which to me is sleep. And it's the first point of emphasis I pretty much make with every single person I talk to. So I want you to start with that one. What's some ways people can help sleep better? What are the benefits of sleeping? And just kind of talk a little bit about it that way.
Yeah, there's so many benefits. And now there's a term out there that we coin as sleep hygiene, like dental hygiene. So sleep is evidence shows now the point, or the epicenter of our wellness, our mental, our moods, our weight, our physiology, biology, spirit. All of those things are connected to that period each day that allows our body to rest and restore. So anxiety, weight gain, all of those things, productivity and focus, everything that functions needs to recharge, like the idea of plugging in your phone every night. If we're not getting that, if our battery is not full, there's no way we're going to dish anything out for our kids, our family, our work, anything for ourselves. So sleep is really important, science-based. And so it's a huge thing. And generally speaking, it's recommended by the CDC, the Sleep Foundation, 7 to 8 hours for adults. And that can be at any point, or if you're working the night shift, that can be hard. Or if your rhythm is different, you're a night owl, but so you have the ability to sleep in late in the morning. So, but that's 7 to 8 hours is really important. And just really taking a look at what's holding you back from getting that. Are you waking up in the middle of the night? Are you not going to bed early enough? Because, it's easy to let that 10-second binge on Netflix come through. Are we on the phone? Or are we, who knows?
What's the most common thing you see with people as far as not getting enough sleep? What's the most common excuse?
Well, not to be cliche, but stress. I mean, people are waking up because they're anxious. They're thinking about things in the middle of the night, or they're on their phone. So if the last thing you do is look at your work email or a text from a friend, or you're playing video games on it or something, you're not relaxing your brain and having that wind down period. And so your brain doesn't have the ability to go into that full rest mode. So you're going to be active in the thinking. And so that's the most common thing is worry. And then electronics, it's really inhibiting the sleep these days.
I've heard to hear that a lot, and I think it's starting to finally come around a little more mainstream about blue light and how it's emitted off of all electronic devices. And some people, and I want you to talk about this a little more, but what I hear a lot is, no, blue light doesn't affect me. I fall asleep right afterwards. And that's just not true. And what aspect? The aspect of, yeah, you might close your eyes, but you're not in stage 4 deep REM sleep, which is what you and I are both referring to. You're in more of an active sleep where you're not really fully resting because your eyes are still stimulated, even though they were strained. So you were straining your eyes, watching TV or looking at your phone, making you think you were tired. Your eyes just hurt, and you didn't end up in stage 4 sleep, and therefore didn't get good enough quality sleep and wake up tired the next day. Want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think that you mentioned a really good point that beyond just the number of the quantity of sleep, the quality is really important. So I know if you get 5 hours of sleep, I track my sleep with my smartwatch and all that, and I can see the cycles. 5 hours of quality sleep can be way better than 8 hours of, really poor sleep. Blue light, I'm not too specifically well versed in that, but I have read some evidence that it is an inhibitor because, as you said, it just is a strain and an activator. And we just need to find a way to wind down at night. And blue light or not, that's too activating.
I think this is going to be my perfect tie-in because this is something I get all the time from clients right here with cell phones. And the biggest excuse I hear all the time is, what if there's an emergency? I need to sleep with my phone in my room. I try using the example, hey, look, listen, I run 2 businesses and a podcast, and my phone's always downstairs when I go to bed. But I know to a lot of people, they feel like they need it just in case something happens, but then their notifications are going off, their phone's texting, and even the stress of it being there ends up keeping some people awake. They feel like they have to check it. So can you talk to us a little bit about that kind of stress when you're sleeping and the effect of cell phones can have on us?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, that could be a long conversation. And I know that's also some cultures of some workplaces, like we need you to be available. I too am an entrepreneur with multiple projects going on multiple time zones. So for me to shut off my phone is also an efforted practice that I have to do. And I have to, and especially there's apps to help you fall asleep. So why not keep the phone right there? So we're just so attached to it. I hate to say it, but we're needed a lot less than we like to think. I'm divorced. I have a co-parent. So my kids, there have been times when there has been an emergency, but I have always been reached when that has been necessary. There are less emergencies and fires to put out than we like to think. And that in and of itself is an anxious mindset. So what can we tell ourselves? That everything's going to be okay. And if there is an emergency, we will be found. People will find us. And work can wait if that's the reason.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, you know what? I could put everything aside right now because if I don't have a fresh mind and I'm not ready to go the next day, my quality is going to be so diminished the following day that it's going to destroy me. And then I'm going to end up being unhealthier. And then being unhealthy is going to take life off of me. And I can't imagine any emergency where people want to inhibit my well-being. And if that needed to happen, and if it was like a true emergency, like you said, someone will come and contact me. But everything else, I could put the fire out in the morning.
Right. And think about what kind of state are you in if you're responding to things in the middle of the night. I mean, some people might not even want you to. So yeah, it's something, it's a practice to let go of for sure. Even if you start doing it one night a week, I'm going to sleep with my phone in a different room and see what happens. And then start building, okay, 2 nights, I'm going to start with it in a different room. So I think that's an important thing. I have made a rule in my house, know that everyone has to put their electronics in the charging station before bed.
I love it. And let's move on to stress, because we talked a lot about anxiety, and everything far in between, which personally, I think a lot of diseases stress ends up making worse. I think stress is a big reason for the weight gain we have in our society, because we all think we need to respond now, instead of when before the technology era, everything could have been kind of put off a little more and we were less stressed about that. Talk to us. What are some, I mean, we all know we're stressed. So what are some things we can do to help prevent stress? What's some stressors in our life that maybe we don't even know about? What do you got for us?
Oh God. Well, I think the mindset, as we were talking about, is really important. Like, I'm needed. I'm overwhelmed. I have to be everything for everybody. I was just reading a wonderful book. It's called How to Raise an Adult, and it's a great parenting book. It's like, oh, I don't have to do everything for my kids. They're capable, and it actually empowers them to be confident. So just taking the pressure off of yourself. And that is a huge stress reducer, but you have to get there. Yeah, since stress is related to cortisol, which is directly related to inflammation, which is now the true silent killer behind all diseases. It depends. And that's really where I love coaching, because it can look different for everybody. Maybe taking a nice walk with your dog at night is your stress reducer. Maybe going and playing, pickleball with somebody. Maybe calling a friend that's near and dear and just chatting it out with them, or having a nice meal or a cup of tea in the morning, or meditation, or playing a game with your kids. So you get to decide what makes you feel relaxed and forget about your to-do list and phone list. I actually had a woman say, my favorite thing is to go to the grocery store by myself. She's like, I love picking out fresh produce. I just can't do it with my kids. And so, wow, okay, if that's your stress reducer, do that.
I love that.
So yeah, it doesn't have to be one thing. There's obviously some things that are proven to be stress reducing. Maybe going to a concert and dancing, or, making a meal together, or listening to a podcast. Who knows? You get to decide, but build in whatever can bring you that moment of not thinking about everything else.
I love it. And I think one of the best advices I heard from another show, actually, I was listening with somebody else. They were talking about stress calendars, where you would schedule stress-free zones in your workday, which would make you more successful and kind of bring you back down to earth. Where he was talking about how, let's say he had a meeting between 9:30 and 10:30, and then 10:30 to 10:40 was his time. We turned his phone off and took 10 minutes to just do something that relaxed him. And then after that, 10:40 to whatever. And he did a couple of these a day, and he noticed the production skyrocketed, which so that was very interesting. What do you have to say to scheduling stress-free time? What do you think of that one?
Well, since we are all, attached and in control with our calendars, I think that's really important. And it's habits are formed when we have some accountability and are scheduled in with boundaries. And so I schedule in my stress time during the day, or else it's not going to happen. And it's really easy to brush it off, or to have someone call me and say, I need this. So yeah, I think scheduling in time. I just read a New York Times article a couple weeks ago saying that science is now saying that we are actually only capable of being attentive 4 to 5 hours a day on like the type of productivity that work or our lives call for us. So taking those scheduled breaks, whether it's a walk to the water cooler or a walk around the block, or stepping away from your desk and something, that actually does, science is proving it increases your productivity. And because you just can't be that on all the time. Same thing with sleep. You have to have some kind of rest.
I think you and I could both attest to this real much. And I really want people just to use me as an example of what not to do, which is wake up, work all day, go to the thing, work all day, expect to be on 24/7, go home, and then you're physically exhausted, crash and wake up and try to do it again.
Yes, burnout. That's actually the definition of burnout.
Burnout is the thing. And if you want to be successful, you want to be healthy, you have to not burn out. And I think it's important for just yet again, I'll just never going to forget this. I think it was when we first opened our doors in our gym about 2 years ago. I burned out. I actually physically got sick so much that it was deteriorating my work product. I ended up with colds and stomach bugs, like almost, it felt like back to back to back because I was working 18-hour days for 3 straight months.
Mm-hmm. It's
7
not
days a week.
sustainable. Yes.
It destroys you.
Yes, it certainly comes up. I mean, that when you start getting sick frequently, it's your body is sending you a message to listen to before the 2x4 hits you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, it whacked me straight across the head.
Yes. Well, I know. I again, my kids are my wine. I love my work, and I love the flexibility and autonomy that I have in my work. However, that can also mean that I'm working all the time, and so when I'm not able to be, let's face it, patient with my kids, if they're just asking for a simple thing and I jump down their throat, or I'm too exhausted to read to them before bed at night, which takes 15 minutes, that's a cue to me. Okay, I'm not in balance here. I'm too stressed out. I don't feel well. And, something that's really important to me.
I love it. And you mentioned the imbalance. I kind of want to start wrapping up, but I want to talk about this a little bit. What are some recommendations to keep your life in balance that can help with stress and help with sleep?
Again, that I do agree that schedule is really important, and scheduling it in, prioritizing some of that white space, or the stress space, or if you are using your phone, there's apps now are right built into the Apple iOS is it's time to go to bed, and it just shuts down. So using those tools that seem to be working against you maybe to help you. And so that is really important. And balance for me is like getting those messages and listening. Like for you, when you were feeling sick, for me, when I'm feeling short or not able to show up, those are cues to start pulling back and saying no to what is impeding your help. And saying no is really hard. I get that. But once you start, like you said, setting those boundaries and saying yes to what feels good, it just is like, that is a natural drug that you seek out.
Absolutely. I really couldn't agree more on that. So last 2 questions I'll ask everybody. In summary, what is some last bit of inspiration you can leave our audience if we were to wrap this all up together in a nice little neat bow? What would you tell them to help them out? I
think that one of the main themes I hear is scheduling and making small steps. All the changes I made, like I said, took years, and that can sound overwhelming, but also give yourself some grace and some time. You don't have to change overnight, and that's the beauty of it. Small steps have big impact, and then they just grow from there. So take care of yourself and be nice to yourself.
Take care of yourself and be nice to yourself. Absolutely love it. Self-care. And the last question, probably the most important, where can people get a hold of you, find you, and all the fun stuff? Go for it.
Just right on my website is where you find all my info, Emily Marquis, MARQUIS.com.
That's super simple.
Yes, it is. One place. Simplicity is my goal.
Simplicity. I love it. That'll keep you guys super stress-free. And thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field.